We're looking at files and lists, and ultimately we are going to create a student grading system. Let's look at what we did last week and what's going to be reusable this week. So we created a couple of modules, the clear screen module and the file ops module. Those are going to be reusable. So hopefully you kept them around, and we'll use them a little bit later today and for sure on Thursday. Also, we set up a basic menu module that we're able to use, and we can modify any way we need to modify it. And again, the more modules you create that do things exactly the way you want them done, that are well tested, the faster you're going to be able to do your code and achieve whatever your goal is, either a contract, higher pay, whatever you're looking for. So when we looked at lists last week, what was one of the problems we found out when we worked with a list and trying to do upgrades and changes and updates? That was last week and nobody remembers.
I was thinking about if there was two of the same names, it wouldn't work.
Two of the same names, it wasn't going to work. There was no real way to create a primary key or a key value that we could key off of to find grades for everyone. Also, what about updates when we start to work with a list and a string? They start to get a little cumbersome. And so that takes us to another tool that we have in Python, and that is the Python dictionary. And I put together some notes for you. You can look at what's available in the textbook, and we'll go a little bit beyond that in the lecture today and look at what's going to happen with dictionaries. Now, Thursday we're going to talk about two things that we can do with the dictionary, and that'll pretty much seal our fate for how we think we're probably going to proceed with our student grade book. Thursday we're going to look at something called shelving and something called pickling. And once you master those with your dictionary functions in Python, nothing's going to stop you, so to speak. So one of the big things that we're able to do is create an immutable index of keys in the dictionary. We know the biggest drawback we had in doing a list last week was we couldn't create a key. We couldn't identify, as an example, a specific student with a specific score. Or it was very hard to identify, let's say if we were looking at automobiles, a specific automobile with a specific license plate or color or interior or whatever. So now with dictionaries, we have an immutable key. What's immutable mean to us?
Can't change.
It can't be changed, right. So right there's the first thing that we want to look at. Additionally, what we're going to see is that immutable key will always hold the same location in our dictionary. So having that gives us the first step up over a list from what we worked with last week. The next thing is very important too. A key in a dictionary can be either a number or a string. Python with dictionaries, it doesn't matter. So in this case, if we wanted to use a student number as our key, we could do that, or we could use a student name. Now, understand this is not a database class, but what's the drawback of using student names as keys in a grading system? Same names. You can have the same names. So the ability to create a key in a Python dictionary that can be either or gives us another opportunity to make this a more functional database. It works well. The other thing that happens when we use a Python dictionary is that we can now pair the key to the values. It's done very simply. It's very easy to do. In fact, there's very little coding done at all. It's the way we set up the dictionary and actually the way we nest a dictionary within a dictionary that makes it very easy to pair these keys up. And so again, where we had to do a lot of coding to figure out how our list was associated last week, this week, with the way we set it up within the dictionary, we'll establish those relationships. A couple of more to look at. When we create a dictionary, we use braces. There are two different ways that you can create it. One I think is a little cumbersome. The book goes over that. The way I prefer to create it, and the less cumbersome way to do it, is to use the braces. So that's the code that we're going to write today. We'll see how to do it with the brace. If you want to look at the other option, go ahead and take a look at it in the textbook. And whichever option to create dictionaries that you're comfortable with is the one that you ought to use. Some people, the brace just doesn't make sense where what they show you in the book does. So you make up your mind. Now, the big thing with the dictionary that we didn't really have a good hands-on with in the list is that we can update, we can delete, and we can append individual attributes within our dictionary. That means that for a specific key, let's say we have a student named Harvey, and for a specific key, test 3, Harvey goes back and corrects his work and we up his grade to a B from a C. In a list, we couldn't really do that without rewriting the entire list. In a dictionary, we can go in and update Harvey's grade for that test. So the dictionary becomes a very, very useful tool in creating a data function within Python. Works extremely well. So what I would like you to do is go ahead and open up PyCharm, create a new script, however you want to name the script, and this is the code that we're going to enter to get started. And we're going to test all this to start with, to get familiar with the dictionary. We're going to work with a dog dictionary, if you will. Now, I think this code is out on D2L in the week 11 content folder, and you can take a look at it out there. If it's not and you're having problems seeing the screen, feel free to move up, or we can delay a couple of minutes and I can put that out there for you. So go ahead and enter this. So what you need to add now is line 11. And notice how we pull information out of our dictionary. We use a print statement, we use the name, and then we use square brackets around the key value, or the key that we want to pull a value out for. So in this case, we're going to take a look at disposition. Go ahead and run your code, and what you should see then as a result is this in your console window. Well, let's take it a step farther, and let's do a little more coding to get comfortable with how we're pulling data out of our dictionary. So let's go ahead and look at this piece of code at line 13. And that should read my dog instead of my do. All right, bad proofreading. So simple code in line 13, what we're really looking at, go away, endpoint protection. What we're really looking at is the way that we treat our dictionary data as a variable. So we usually use the dictionary name, a square bracket, and the key that we want the information for. Now, another thing that becomes very, very useful in comparing dictionaries, and where I think dictionaries have it all over lists when we're starting to look at a variety of different data, is the way that we can compare. So now on next couple of lines down, I want you to create another dictionary. And this time we're going to put the information in a different order. Notice in line 17, when we're using dictionaries as variables, they act like just any normal variable that we've created within Python. It's only when we're extracting data from that dictionary that we have to do a couple of special things. Either way works well. You can practice commenting out lines. And what we want to do now is we're going to create a birthday dictionary. So we do that at line 20. And line 20 you can extend all the way across the page if you like. I concatenated it after December 12th, so I could blow it up on the slide. This is a very simple example, so if you look at the dictionary, we can remember the names Alice, Bob, and Mickey. So when you run your program, go ahead and type in one of the names, and you'll find out when their birthday is. The next option, either type in another name or just hit enter, and your program will complete, just as we wrote it. So at this thought, you might be thinking at this point, well, we haven't seen a whole lot yet that's too much different than a list. In fact, we've got to write a little bit more code when we generate this thing. But now we're going to look at something that is a little bit different than what we can do with a list. And that is, we'll add an else statement to this. And what will happen is that if the name you type in is not in the dictionary, it'll add it and it'll prompt you for that birth date. And once you get your code in, go ahead and run a test and use any name that you like. And you'll be able to add that name to the dictionary. So now we add another layer of code on that makes our dictionary even more user-friendly to us as we're working with our data. So if we go a little further, we'll find out that we can actually locate data by using the values if we want to. If we know a specific value and we want to find the key out, we can do that. And vice versa, we can locate data by using the key. So in what we just prepared, let's add 2 more lines of code. Now we know how to bring the keys up. We know how to bring the values up. And knowing the ability to bring up the keys can help us if we've got a large database where we need to sort through the keys to find out maybe a key, the exact name of the key that we want to work with. Well, let's review just a little bit and step backwards and throw all of this into a for loop. And notice what we're doing. Now with our for loop, in the past we've only used one variable. Now we're going to use two variables. The key, the K for our key, and the V for our value. And then we can use the format command to print these out. And when you get the code in and you run it, it's going to look something like that. Using just a very simple dictionary. But it gets a little bit better. And now we're going to get into the good stuff, because there are some problems using just a single dictionary. Right now, I'm looking at just one value. But if I want to make a grading system, or I want to make some sort of an accounting system, or track the books that I've read by different authors, that single dictionary isn't going to work well. And so what we're able to do with the dictionary is we can nest it. And we can nest dictionaries into as many levels as you want to list them in. Now, when we get started with that, you'll see that it starts to get complicated, and I'll remind you of that a little bit later. But the ability to nest a dictionary allows us to create a very, very usable tracking system for any object that we want to collect data about. Second of all, we can go in and modify the values. The example I gave you at the beginning of class, where we want to go in and change somebody's grade. With a list, we have to rewrite the entire list. With a dictionary, even a nested dictionary, we can go in and change just one value, which makes this, again, extremely more useful than what the list was. We can also add keys. And let's say halfway through a semester we have a new student join our class. We could add them in without any problem and start recording their grades from the point that they entered class. So let's take a look at how we do this. Open yet another script, if you would. And this time we're going to build a nested dictionary. And look at the screen, if you would, for a couple of seconds so I can point a few things out. We name it whatever you're going to name it. In this case, I went guest list. We've got an opening bracket and an ending bracket. When I do this, I usually hit my return and put that ending bracket down on another line until I finish up. And then it becomes very simple. We create our key in the first nest, in this case Alice, and then we create a second nest dictionary, and we talk about a key and a value, and a key and a value. And now what we weren't able to do with a single dictionary, we can do now with a nested dictionary. We can create another key called Bob and create either the same or new keys and values for Bob and Carol and Ted. So go ahead and add that data. The next piece of code I'm going to show you is going to complete this section. What I want you to do, though, is only enter lines 19 and 20, and you can go back and add the remainders. Line 19 and 20 will show us exactly what we want to do. Of the information that we want, and that report's going to look like this. We can format it very simply, should we want to, and now we've got a total over all the guests that are coming to our party and what they're going to bring. But we can go a little bit further. So let's add these lines in above your code that you just created. So we're adding more variables. Once you run the code, this is the results that you get. And I cut this and moved it down to a second line so it would be half readable. Notice how it's being reported out. Our dictionary keys are the first dictionary that we created. And the keys are Alice, Ted, Bob, and Carol. Our values actually are the keys and values of each line of the Alice, Ted, Bob, and Carol that we've created. And so we can go on and we can nest this as far as we want to. But I give you this caveat and this warning. One level of nesting is very useful, but it gets very, very complicated the further down you go. And we're going to take a look at that next. So I've used 3 levels of nesting, and it's fairly easy to figure out. When you get to 5 and more, it starts to get kind of difficult to keep track of everything that's going to happen. So let's go ahead and add this code to what we've already got built, and we'll look at how we use the nest and how we can modify data. Now, before you run your code, look up at where you created the dictionary and find out how many apples Bob was going to bring. I think it was 3. When you run your code after the lines that we just put in, you see that that's been updated. Now Bob has 5 apples. So think back to how we did that last week when we were working with a list. We had to go back and literally modify the entire list. Now we can target the values that we want to change and work with it. Okay, and this next piece of code is just adding to what we created to give us a little bit different printout. And you don't need to go ahead, or you don't need to enter this if you don't want to. Here's what the results look like when you run it.
So whatever name you put in, it's just adding 2 apples?
Whatever name you put in, you're going to add 2 apples. All right. Now this is kind of cumbersome here where we have to go in and mess with the code. So let's go ahead and set it up with line 36, 37, 39, and 40. So what we're going to do is we're going to prompt for the name and we're going to prompt for the value that we're going to add in. And so now our dictionary becomes very user-friendly. So there's our output, and what we've actually done is added limes to the option or to the objects that Ted was going to bring. So not only can we add modify the values that they're bringing, we can add all new values in if we want to. So, just to summarize, we've got everything we need to build a grade system now, with the exception of what? The ability to save the information, our dictionary in this case, out to a file. So, next class we'll take a look at how we load and unload the dictionary. I had a homework assignment for you, but we'll save that. Be gone.
Bless you.
Yeah.